Breathe out, slowly, not a sigh, not a gasp. Just let the air leave you over 5 or 6 seconds, the way it leaves on its own when you finally sit down at the end of a long day. Now, before you breathe in again, hold still for a moment and notice something. There is a settling, a small, quiet dropping of the floor beneath your attention. Most people call it relaxation and leave it there. But something specific just happened inside your chest. Something mechanical. Something you could measure with 2 fingers on your wrist if you knew exactly when to look. Your heart slowed down, not because you calmed yourself. The slowing came first. The calm came after. And the lever you pulled to make it happen was not the breath in. It was the breath out. You have been told your whole life to take a deep breath. When you were frightened, when you were grieving, when a nurse wrapped a cuff around your arm and the number came back higher than anyone wanted, take a deep breath. And it works. But almost nobody has ever told you why or which half of the breath is doing the work. Because here is the thing that took medicine a surprisingly long time to map. The calming does not live in the inhale. The inhale, if anything, gently winds you up. The calming lives in the exhale, and it travels down a single nerve, and that nerve connects the one part of your body you can command, your breathing, to the one part you were told you could never touch, your heartbeat. Let me walk you through exactly how, because it is not vague, and it is not mystical. It is plumbing and wiring. And by the end, I want to show you something rather beautiful, that an old woman with a rosary and a man on a mat chanting in Sanskrit, separated by continents and centuries, and knowing nothing of each other, both found this nerve. They found it by accident, and they found the same setting on it, almost to the breath. Start with the wiring. Sitting at the top of your heart, in the wall of the right upper chamber, is a small cluster of specialized cells called the sinoatrial node. It is perhaps a few millimeters across. It is your heart's pacemaker, not a metaphor, the actual one, the one the manufactured devices are named after. Left entirely to itself, with no instruction from anywhere, this little knot of cells would fire at around 100 beats a minute. That is its natural rhythm. You can take the heart out of the body, and physiologists have, and that node keeps ticking near 100 on its own. But your resting heart rate is not 100, it is 60, perhaps 70, perhaps less if you have been a walker or a swimmer all your life. Something is holding it down, something is standing on the brake. That something is a nerve, the longest of its kind in your body, wandering down from the base of your brain, branching as it goes, to your throat, your lungs, your stomach, your gut, and sending a quiet, constant fiber to that pacemaker in your heart. It is called the vagus nerve, from the Latin for wandering, because the early anatomists watched it roam all over the torso and could not believe one nerve went so many places. And along it, all day, without a single conscious instruction from you, a steady stream of signals travels to your heart saying, slower, slower than your own pacemaker wants. The vagus is the brake pedal and it is always slightly pressed. This is the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest side, the opposite of fight or flight. The chemical it releases at the heart is acetylcholine. When the vagus fires, the nerve endings dump acetylcholine onto the pacemaker cells, and the acetylcholine opens particular potassium channels, and potassium leaves the cells, and the inside of each cell becomes more negatively charged. A more negative cell is a more reluctant cell. It takes longer to build up to the threshold where it fires the next beat. So the beats spread apart, the heart slows. That is the whole break at the molecular level. Acetylcholine, potassium channels, a reluctant pacemaker, no belief required, no mood required, just a chemical handshake at a cluster of cells. Now here is the first thing that should surprise you. That break is not pressed evenly. It pulses in time with your breathing. put 2 fingers on the pulse at your wrist, breathe slowly, and pay close attention, and you can feel it. As you breathe in, your heart speeds up just slightly. As you breathe out, it slows down again. In, faster, out, slower. Most people go their whole lives without noticing, but it is there in every healthy heart, and it has a name: respiratory sinus arrhythmia. Arrhythmia sounds alarming, but here it means the opposite of trouble. It means your heart rate is breathing along with you. It is one of the surest signs that the wiring between your lungs and your heart is intact and supple. Here is why it happens. When you breathe in, your brain briefly eases off the vagal brake, lifts the pressure off the pedal. With less acetylcholine arriving, the pacemaker speeds back toward its own faster rhythm, and your heart quickens. When you breathe out, the brain presses the brake down again, more vagal firing, more acetylcholine, and your heart slows. The inhale lifts the brake, the exhale presses it. That is the hinge of everything. The exhale presses the brake, the inhale lifts it. This is why the old advice was always half wrong. When you tell a frightened person to take a deep breath in and stop there, you have asked them to do the one part of the cycle that lifts the brake and speeds the heart. The medicine is not in the drawing of air. It is in the long, slow release of it, the part most people rush through to get to the next big inhale. The exhale is where your one voluntary nerve presses down on your one involuntary organ. It is the only conscious lever you have on a system that was supposed to be sealed away from you, and you reach it through the breath out. If that were the whole story, it would already be worth knowing. But there is a second mechanism running at the same time, through entirely different sensors, and when the two line up, something close to resonance happens in your circulation. In the walls of your largest arteries, in the arch of the aorta as it leaves the heart, and in the carotids running up either side of your neck, there are stretch sensors. Tiny nerve endings woven into the artery wall that fire faster when the wall is stretched harder, which is to say when your blood pressure rises. They are called baroreceptors, baro from the Greek for pressure. Their job is to keep your blood pressure from swinging too far in either direction. They are the thermostat of your circulation, except they regulate pressure instead of temperature. When your blood pressure climbs, the baroreceptors fire harder and send that signal up, many of them along that same wandering vagus nerve, to a control center in the brainstem. The brainstem responds by pressing the vagal brake harder. Heart slows, less blood is pushed per second, pressure eases down. When pressure falls, the brake lifts, the heart speeds, pressure comes back up. A feedback loop running constantly beneath your awareness. This is the baroreflex. Now watch what your breathing does to it. Every time you inhale, your chest expands and the pressure inside drops. When you exhale, it shifts back. So every breath sends a small rhythmic pressure wave rolling through your arteries. And those waves are exactly what the baroreceptors are built to feel. Every breath, in effect, plucks the string the baroreflex is listening to. And here it becomes a tuning problem, a genuinely beautiful one. Every feedback loop with a delay in it has a frequency at which it naturally rings, a resonant frequency. Push a child on a swing at just the right rhythm and the swing climbs higher and higher with almost no effort because you are matching its natural period. Push at the wrong rhythm and you fight it. The baroreflex loop, with its built-in delay between a pressure change and the heart's response, has exactly such a natural rhythm. And in the adult human, that rhythm sits remarkably consistently at around 6 cycles per minute. 6 breaths a minute, 1 full cycle every 10 seconds, which is to say, if you breathe in for about 5 seconds and out for about 5, you are breathing at the exact rhythm the pressure reflex in your arteries most wants to swing at. The pressure wave from your breathing and the natural oscillation of the baroreflex line up. They reinforce each other. The swings in your heart rate grow larger and smoother, riding up on each inhale, gliding down on each exhale in great, slow arcs. The system resonates. This is not a folk claim. The resonant nature of the baroreflex, and that figure of roughly 6 breaths a minute, was worked out carefully by researchers in cardiovascular control, Evgeny Vaskilo and Paul Lehrer prominent among them, building the framework that came to be called resonance frequency breathing. The number is not magic, and it is not identical for everyone. For a taller person with longer arteries, it sits a little lower because the loop's delays are a little longer. But 6 per minute is the center of gravity for adult humans. It is, in a real sense, the speed your circulation is tuned to hum at. Put the two mechanisms side by side. The first, the vagus pressing the brake on every exhale, slows your heart breath by breath. The second, the baroreflex resonance, means that if you slow your breathing towards 6 a minute, you are not merely slowing the heart, you are driving the whole pressure-regulating system at the one frequency where its swings grow largest with the least effort. And the exhale is the downstroke of that swing, the long glide where the brake is pressed and the heart spreads its beats apart. A slow exhale at 6 breaths a minute is you, with the one part of your nervous system you can command, gently rocking the part you cannot, at exactly the rhythm it most wants to be rocked. And now comes the part that catches almost everyone off guard. You would think, anyone would think, that a calm heart is a steady heart, a nice even tick like a clock, the same gap between every beat. That sounds like health. It is the opposite. A heart in a calm, well-regulated state is not steady at all. It is constantly varying, speeding on the inhale, slowing on the exhale, dancing around its average from one beat to the next. The gaps are never quite the same twice. That variation has a name and a measurement, heart rate variability, and in cardiology, a higher heart rate variability. More difference between consecutive beats is one of the markers of a healthier, more responsive heart. The metronomic heart, ticking with eerie regularity, is the one that has lost its responsiveness, the heart whose vagal brake has gone slack, running closer to its own blind 100-beat default with nothing playing across it. Rigidity in the heart is not strength. It is the loss of conversation between the nerve and the node. So here is the counterintuitive truth at the center of all this. When you breathe slowly and your heart swings in great smooth arcs with your breath, your heart rate variability goes up. Your heart becomes less like a clock and more like a sail filling and easing in a steady wind. We spend so much energy wishing our pulse calm and even and unremarkable, when the actual picture of peace is a heart that is breathing along with us, rising and falling, never holding the same beat twice. Now, I want to be careful here because intellectual honesty is the whole point of telling you any of this. A great deal of what I have described is firmly established, that the vagus slows the heart through acetylcholine. Textbook, demonstrated for the better part of a century, ever since Otto Loewy's experiment in 1921, when he stimulated the vagus of one frog's heart, collected the fluid around it, dripped that fluid onto a second frog's heart, and watched the second heart slow as if its own nerve had been touched. He later said the design of that experiment came to him in a dream, and he woke at 3 a.m. to scribble it down. The chemical he had found was acetylcholine. That is bedrock, that the heart speeds on inhalation and slows on exhalation. Bedrock. That the baroreflex regulates pressure beat to beat and rings near 6 breaths a minute. Well established. What is on softer ground is the longer story. The claim that practicing this kind of breathing over months produces large, lasting changes in baseline blood pressure or long-term health. There, the evidence is real, but more modest and more mixed than the enthusiasts suggest. The acute effect, what happens to your heart in the 10 seconds after you breathe out, that is solid and reproducible. The decades-long promises are thinner. I would rather you trust the part that is true than be sold the part that is only hopeful, because the part that is true is more than enough. Now let me tell you about the rosary and the mantra, because this is where the science stops being a diagram and becomes something almost tender. In 2001, a group of researchers, led by Luciano Bernardi, working in Pavia in Italy, published a study in the British Medical Journal, in their Christmas issue, the one where the journal allows its scientists a little room for the human and the unusual. Bernardi's team had become curious why certain devotional practices seemed to settle the body, and they decided to actually measure it. They brought in volunteers and recorded everything: breathing rate, heart rate, blood pressure, while the volunteers did several things in turn. Among them, recite the Ave Maria, the rosary said the traditional way in Latin, the rhythm passed down through generations of grandmothers fingering beads in quiet churches, and separately chant a yoga mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum, the Sanskrit chant carried for centuries through Tibetan practice. When they looked at the breathing traces, they found something I do not think the volunteers knew they were doing. Both the rosary and the mantra slowed the breath to almost exactly 6 breaths per minute. Not approximately, almost exactly. The natural cadence of the Latin Ave Maria, said in the old unhurried way, with its phrases and its pauses, paced the breath to right around 6. And the mantra, in its own language, did the very same thing. Both landed the breather precisely on the resonant frequency of the human baroreflex. And when the breathing reached that rhythm, the heart and the arteries followed, the slow oscillations growing large and synchronized, the whole circulation moving together in one slow, coherent wave. Sit with what that means. The vagus nerve was not known to medicine when these prayers were composed. The baroreflex was not discovered until the 20th century. Acetylcholine had not been dreamed of, quite literally, not dreamed of, until Loewy's frog hearts in 1921. And yet the rhythm of the rosary, shaped over centuries by nothing more than what felt right to say and how long a breath would carry a phrase, had settled onto the exact frequency the human circulation is tuned to resonate at, and so had the mantra, on the other side of the world, in another tongue, in another faith, with no contact between them. The grandmother with her beads and the monk with his chant had each found the same nerve. They found it not by dissection but by devotion. They found the brake pedal, and they had been pressing it gently for centuries, every time they prayed. Bernardi's team were careful in how they put it. They did not claim the prayers were medicine, and neither will I. They observed a physiological effect of a particular breathing rhythm and noted that 2 ancient practices happened to produce it. But there is something worth pausing over in the fact that human beings, reaching for calm and for the sacred, kept arriving at 6 breaths a minute, as if the body had been quietly guiding the practice all along. You do not need a prayer for it, and you do not need to believe anything. The mechanism does not check your beliefs at the door. But if you are someone who has held a rosary, or sat with a mantra, or sung the long, slow lines of a hymn in a church where the ceiling carried the sound, know that you were never only doing something for your spirit, you were also, in the most literal and measurable way, pressing the one lever you have on your own heart. The 2 were never separate. So let me bring this back to your own chest, because it is not a thing that happened to someone in a laboratory in Pavia. It is happening in you, right now, on every breath, whether you attend to it or not. That brake, the vagus, the acetylcholine, the reluctant pacemaker, is pressed and eased on every exhale and inhale of your life, and has been since before you were born. You have spent decades unconsciously rocking your own heart with your breath. The only thing the slow breath changes is that you take the rocking into your own hands. You lengthen the exhale, the part where the brake presses hardest, and you slow the whole cadence towards 6 a minute, where the arteries want to swing, and the swings grow large, and the heart moves in those great smooth arcs, and the calm you feel a few seconds later is not a mood you talked yourself into. It is the readout of a nerve doing what it has always quietly done. You have a brake pedal. It runs through one nerve. You reach it not by trying to relax, not by thinking calm thoughts, not by believing anything at all. You reach it by breathing out slowly and giving the brake a long press before you breathe in again. The inhale lifts it, the exhale presses it. That is the whole secret, and it is not really a secret. It is just plumbing and wiring that no one took the time to explain. So breathe out now the way you did at the start. Slowly. 5 or 6 seconds, no hurry. Let the air leave the way it leaves when you finally set down something heavy. And in those seconds, somewhere in the wall of your right atrium, a few millimeters of specialized cells are being told, by a wandering nerve, in a language of potassium and acetylcholine, to take their time, to spread the beats apart, to let the next one come a little later than the last. That settling you feel is not nothing. It is the oldest conversation in your body, between the breath you can hold and the heart you cannot, and you just took your turn to speak.